I am deeply in love with a mad woman in the street. Liam adjusted his grip on the gift bag he was carrying, the glittering ribbon catching the sunlight as he walked briskly. The bag held a neatly wrapped box, a new video game console for Henry, his best friend since childhood. The party had already started, and Liam hated being late. As he approached the junction near the old church, a splash of water caught his attention. Turning his head, he saw her. At first, he thought it was just another person washing by the roadside, a common enough sight. But as he looked closer, he realized there was something different about this woman. She stood barefoot under the trickling tap, her tattered dress clinging to her thin frame. Her hair, a wild tangle of black, cascaded over her shoulders, glistening with water. Despite her ragged appearance, there was an almost ethereal beauty to her. She was singing. Her voice was unlike anything Liam had ever heard, soft yet piercing, carrying a melody so haunting it seemed to reach into his very soul. The words were unintelligible, a string of sounds that might have been nonsense, but the emotion in her voice was undeniable. It was joy and pain intertwined, a song of freedom and sorrow. Liam felt his feet root to the ground. He knew he should look away. Everything about her screamed that she was an outcast, someone the world had discarded. People passed her by without a second glance, their expressions a mixture of pity and disgust. Yet Liam couldn't tear his eyes away. Her face was striking, beneath the grime and wear of life on the streets. Her features were delicate, a sharp nose, full lips, and wide, expressive eyes that seemed to hold a storm within them. She didn't notice him watching. She was too lost in her song, swaying gently under the water's flow. Something stirred in Liam's chest, a sensation he couldn't name. It wasn't lust, nor was it simple curiosity. It was ... connection. What's wrong with me? He muttered under his breath, shaking his head as if to dislodge the thought. He had a party to get to, and here he was, gawking at a stranger, a mad woman, no less. As if in a trance, he took a step closer. The faint scent of the tap water mixed with the earthiness of the road, and Liam caught a whiff of her, the unmistakable smell of someone who had lived too long on the streets. It should have repulsed him, but it didn't. Instead, it made his heart ache. A car honked loudly, jerking Liam back to reality. Embarrassed, he looked around to see if anyone had noticed him staring, but no one cared. The world moved on as it always did, oblivious to the strange pull this woman had on him. He hurried away, his mind in turmoil. When Liam arrived at Henry's house, the party was in full swing. The garden was strung with fairy lights, casting a warm glow over the scene. Boys and girls danced to the upbeat music, their laughter and chatter filling the air. The smell of grilled meat wafted over from a nearby barbecue, making Liam's stomach growl. But despite the lively atmosphere, Liam felt out of place. He handed Henry the gift with a half-hearted smile. "Happy birthday, man." "Liam, you're late," Henry exclaimed, grinning as he pulled him into a hug. "Come on, grab a drink and join us. The dance floor's waiting." Liam nodded, but his movements were mechanical. He took a soda and found a quiet corner to sit in, his eyes scanning the crowd. Everyone seemed so carefree, so utterly immersed in the moment. But Liam's mind was elsewhere. He saw her face again, the way the water had dripped from her hair, the way her voice had trembled with emotion. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake the image. Henry found him a few minutes later. "Hey, what's with you? You've been sitting here like a statue. Come on, man, it's my birthday." "Yes, but what?" Liam hesitated, then decided to tell him. "I saw someone today." Henry raised an eyebrow. "Okay, who?" "A woman." Henry smirked. "Ah, now we're talking. Who is she?" "Someone from school." "Did you finally ask Ella out?" Liam shook his head. "No, she's not someone you'd know." He took a deep breath. "She's a mad woman." The smirk vanished from Henry's face, replaced by confusion. "A mad woman? Are you serious right now?" "She was beautiful, Henry, not just in how she looked, but there was something about her, something real." Henry stared at him, then burst into laughter. "Liam, come on, you're joking, right? You're messing with me." But Liam wasn't joking. His expression was earnest, almost desperate. "I'm serious, Henry, I can't stop thinking about her." The laughter died in Henry's throat. "You're serious," he said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "I am," Liam said firmly. Henry leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Liam, listen to me. Whatever you're feeling, it's not real. She's not someone you can." "I don't care," Liam interrupted, his voice rising. A few heads turned in their direction, but he didn't care. "I don't care what anyone thinks. I love her." The words came out louder than he intended, and for a moment, the chatter and laughter around them seemed to fade. A few of their friends, hearing the exchange, started to laugh. "Liam's in love with a mad woman," one of them jeered. Liam's face burned, but he didn't back down. "Yes, I am. And I don't care what any of you think." The laughter grew louder, but Liam ignored it. His heart was pounding, his emotions a tangled mess of shame and defiance. He knew how ridiculous he sounded, but he also knew that what he felt was real. As the party continued, Liam remained in his corner, his thoughts consumed by the woman he'd seen. The music, the laughter, the lights, none of it mattered. All he could think about was her, and deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. Liam's room was quiet that night, but his mind was not. The house was a sprawling mansion on the outskirts of Lagos, its walls adorned with expensive art and its halls filled with the quiet hum of luxury. His parents, Mark and Evelyn, were well known in the business world. Their wealth and influence made them known by many, but none of that mattered to Liam. He lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling, his thoughts consumed by a single face. He had tried to sleep, but every time he closed his eyes, he saw her. The way the sunlight had caught in her hair, turning the strands into a cascade of liquid gold. The way her voice had trembled as she sang, raw and unfiltered, like a melody from another world. He sat up suddenly, his chest heaving with emotion. This wasn't normal. He knew it wasn't. What kind of person fell in love with a woman they'd only seen for a few minutes? A woman who wasn't even sane. "Get a grip, Liam," he muttered to himself, running a hand through his hair. But the more he tried to push the thoughts away, the stronger they became. It was as if something inside him had awakened, something he couldn't ignore. The next morning, Liam sat at the breakfast table, stirring his cereal absent-mindedly. His older sister, Charlotte, was scrolling through her phone, her perfectly manicured nails clicking against the glass. Across the table, their younger brother, Ethan, was flipping through a comic book, occasionally shoving spoonfuls of eggs into his mouth. Their mother, Evelyn, breezed into the room, her sharp eyes immediately narrowing on Liam. "You look terrible, darling. Didn't you sleep well?" "I'm fine," Liam said quickly, but his voice lacked conviction. "You don't look fine," Charlotte chimed in without looking up from her phone. "What's going on? Did Ella finally dump you?" Liam shot her a glare. "I wasn't dating Ella. Could have fooled me," she said with a smirk, taking a sip of her coffee. Their father entered then, his presence commanding as always. Mark was a tall, imposing man with a no-nonsense demeanor, and he had little patience for distractions. "What's this about Ella?" he asked, glancing at Liam. "Nothing," Liam said quickly. "Liam's just being moody," Charlotte said. "It's probably about a girl. You know that he's too emotional, is it?" Evelyn asked, her tone softening. "Oh, Liam, that's wonderful. Who is she?" Liam froze, his spoon hovering over his bowl. For a moment, he considered lying, but something inside him rebelled against the idea. He didn't want to hide this, not from his family, not from anyone. "It's not what you think," he said slowly. She's different." "Oh, different?" Charlotte said with a teasing lilt. "Is she goth? Into crystals?" "Charlotte, that's enough," Evelyn said sharply before turning back to Liam. "Darling, it's okay. We won't judge. Just tell us about her." Liam took a deep breath. "She's not like other girls. He hesitated, the words catching in his throat. "She's homeless, and she's not all there mentally." The room went silent. Even Ethan looked up from his comic book, his eyes wide. "What?" Evelyn said, her voice barely above a whisper. "She's a mad woman," Liam said, his voice trembling but resolute. "But she's beautiful, and I think I'm in love with her." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Charlotte burst into laughter, the sound sharp and mocking. "You're joking, right? Liam, come on, you've always been weird, but this is next level." "Charlotte, stop," Evelyn said, though her own expression was one of disbelief. "Liam, darling, you can't be serious." "I am serious," Liam said, his voice rising. "I know how it sounds, but it's real. She's special. I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like I've known her forever, like we're connected somehow." "Liam," Mark said, his tone stern, "this isn't just strange, it's concerning. Are you feeling okay? Have you been stressed lately?" "I'm not crazy, Dad," Liam snapped. "I know what I feel." Mark shook his head, and Evelyn placed a hand on Liam's arm, her touch gentle but firm. "Sweetheart, we're just worried about you. Falling in love with someone in a state ... It's not normal. This isn't normal at all." "Maybe normal isn't what I want," Liam said, standing abruptly. "Maybe I don't care what's normal." He left the table without another word, his heart pounding. He didn't know why he expected them to understand. How could they, when he barely understood it himself? That afternoon, Liam found himself wandering the streets of Lagos, retracing his steps from the previous day. He didn't know what he was looking for, perhaps, or maybe just some clarity, but she was gone. The tap where she had stood was empty, the water dripping into a muddy puddle. Liam stared at it for a long time, his heart sinking. "Excuse me," he said, stopping an old man who was passing by. "Did you see a woman here yesterday? She was ... singing." The man gave him a puzzled look. "You mean the mad woman? She comes and goes. Nobody knows where she stays." "Yes, I am looking for her." The only man gave him a kind of expression that said, "Are you also mad?" "Well, continue to look for her," the man muttered. Liam nodded, thanking him before walking away. His heart ached with a longing he couldn't explain. Over the next few days, Liam's obsession only grew. He began spending hours wandering the streets, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. His friends noticed his absence at school. His teachers remarked on his lack of focus, and his family grew increasingly concerned. When his parents finally confronted him, he stood his ground. "You can't make me stop," he said firmly. "I know it doesn't make sense, but I can't let this go." "What do you know about love, Liam?" Mark questioned furiously. "Tell me what you know about love." "You don't know anything, and here. What I know about love is that I love her. I love her, everything about her." Lane cut in. "I can see that you are not different from her," Mark murmured under his breath. Their frustration was palpable, but so was their helplessness. They didn't know how to reach him, how to pull him back from this strange, uncharted territory he had wandered into. Liam didn't care. He didn't need their approval or their understanding. All he needed was her. Many days and weeks passed by, but Liam couldn't stop thinking about her. The image of the mad woman haunted him, a shadow he couldn't shake. He saw her in his dreams, her wild hair catching the sunlight, her song echoing in the distance. He saw her face in the reflections of windows, her eyes burning with an intensity he couldn't explain. At school, he became a ghost. His teachers called on him, but he didn't hear. His friends tried to pull him into conversations, but his answers were clipped, distracted. Even Henry, who had laughed at him at the party, began to grow genuinely worried. "Liam, you're scaring me," Henry said one afternoon as they sat on the bleachers after gym class. The other boys were playing soccer, their shouts and laughter filling the field, but Liam sat apart, his gaze fixed on the empty space. "I don't need you to understand," Liam said quietly. "Do you hear yourself?" Henry pressed, his voice rising in frustration. "You're talking about a mad woman like she's your soulmate. She doesn't even know you exist. You think I don't know that?" Liam snapped, his voice trembling. "Do you think I haven't tried to stop feeling this way? But I can't, Henry. I've tried, and I can't. See, I think the only thing you want from that mad woman is what she has in between her legs. But don't dare say such a thing again. You are insulting me and the love I have for her." Henry stared at him, his mouth opening as if to argue, but he said nothing. What could he say? His best friend was slipping away, lost in a world no one else could see. At home, things were worse. Liam's parents had tried to reason with him at first. They invited counselors to the house, hoping someone could talk sense into him, but Liam refused to engage. When they suggested he see a therapist, he stormed out of the room. The turning point came one evening during dinner. The family was seated around the long oak table, the chandelier casting a beautiful glow over their plates. Evelyn had made Liam's favourite pounded yam and egusi soup, but he barely touched it. "Liam," Mark said, his voice calm but firm, "we need to talk about this." "About what?" Liam said, not looking up. "About this obsession," Mark continued. "It's not healthy. It's affecting your school, your relationships, and your future." Liam's fork clattered against his plate. "My future? You think I care about my future right now? You should care," Mark said, his voice rising. "You're throwing everything away for what? A fantasy. A woman who doesn't even know you exist." "She's not a fantasy," Liam shouted, standing so abruptly that his chair scraped against the floor. His chest heaved as he looked at his family, his father's stern face, his mother's concerned frown, Charlotte's mocking smirk, and Ethan's wide-eyed silence. "She's real," Liam said, his voice breaking. "She's real, and I love her. What I felt for her, I have never felt for anyone." Evelyn reached out to him, her voice soft. "Liam, sweetheart, we're not saying she isn't real. We're saying, maybe this isn't love. Maybe it's something else. Confusion, sympathy, anything but." "Stop," Liam cut her off, his voice trembling with rage. "You don't understand. None of you understand." He stormed out of the dining room, slamming the door behind him. In the silence that followed, Evelyn buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. Mark placed a hand on her back, his expression grim. "This has gone too far," Mark said. "We can't let him spiral like this. What can we do?" Evelyn whispered, her voice thick with tears. Mark's jaw tightened. "We'll send him to a rehabilitation center, just for a while. He needs help, and we can't give it to him." Liam knew what was coming. He overheard his parents talking late at night, their voices low but urgent. He knew they thought he was losing his mind. Maybe he was, but the thought of being separated from her, of being locked away while she wandered the streets alone, was unbearable. He began searching for her more desperately than ever. Every free moment, he was on the streets, following whispers and rumors. He asked shopkeepers, beggars, anyone who might have seen her. Some laughed at him. Others shook their heads in pity. "She's just a mad woman, boy," one old vendor told him. "She comes and goes. She's like a ghost." But Liam wouldn't give up. He couldn't. One evening on his search he saw her. She was sitting on the steps of an abandoned building, her knees drawn to her chest, her hair falling in a curtain around her face. Her dress was dirtier than before, and her feet were bare, caked with mud. But to Liam, she was as beautiful as ever. His heart pounded as he approached her. "Hey," he said softly, crouching a few feet away. She looked up, her eyes wide and wild. For a moment, she seemed to see him, truly see him, and Liam felt his breath catch. But then her expression changed, her gaze sliding past him as if he weren't there. "It's okay," Liam said, his voice shaking. "I just want to talk. I just want to know your name." She didn't respond. Instead, she began humming a tune, the same haunting melody he had heard before. Liam's chest ached as he listened, tears welling in his eyes. "I don't know if you can understand me," he said, his voice breaking, "but I need you to know. I don't know why, but I want to know you to be your friend." For a fleeting moment, her humming stopped, and she looked at him again. This time, there was something different in her gaze, something almost human. But just as quickly, it was gone. She stood abruptly, turning away. Liam reached out, desperate to stop her, but she was already walking, her bare feet padding against the concrete. "Wait," he called after her. "Please, don't go." But she didn't stop. Liam sank to his knees, his hands trembling. He didn't know how long he sat there, the night air growing colder around him. All he knew was that he couldn't give up. Not now, not ever. The passenger concluded that he was also mad. They said that his own had just started. People laughed at him saying, "Mad man and mad woman are in love." Hope someone was at home when he left. some said, while laughing. Back at home, the tension reached a breaking point. When Liam returned, his father was waiting for him, his expression dark. "Pack your bags," Mark said. "You're leaving tomorrow." "What?" Liam said, his stomach sinking. "You're going to a rehabilitation center," Mark said. "It's for your own good." "No," Liam said, his voice shaking. "You can't do this." "We have to," Evelyn said, her voice thick with emotion. "Liam, please. We're doing this because we love you. We can't take this embarrassment again." "Which embarrassment?" Liam asked. "Liam, I saw you. We saw you with that mad woman. Just like a passerby said, you are not normal as well. We are doing this because we love you." "No," Liam shouted, his voice cracking. "You don't love me. If you did, you'd understand." His parents didn't respond. Mark turned and walked away, his footsteps heavy. Evelyn stayed for a moment longer, her eyes glistening with tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered before following her husband. Liam stood in the hallway, his fists clenched, his heart pounding with anger and despair. They didn't understand. They never would. But he wasn't giving up. Not on her. Liam sat on the edge of the small bed in the rehabilitation center, staring at the blank wall. The days felt like years. Therapy sessions dragged on endlessly, each question poking and prodding at the raw wound in his heart. He barely spoke, his responses clipped and detached. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, the mad woman with her tangled hair, the way her laughter had echoed like music, the fleeting look in her eyes when he had first seen her. He clung to those memories, even as the therapists and doctors tried to convince him. They were nothing more than an obsession, a symptom of something broken inside him. "Why her?" one therapist asked during their third session. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. "Of all the people in the world, why do you think you've fixated on this woman?" "I don't know," Liam said flatly. "Do you think it could be because she represents something? Freedom, perhaps? A life without expectations?" "No," Liam replied, his voice cracking. "It's not like that. I love her. I don't know why, but I do. She's special." The therapist scribbled something in her notebook, her expression unreadable. "Sometimes, when we can't control our emotions, we attach them to someone or something that seems unattainable. It's a way of coping." "I'm not coping," Liam snapped. "I'm in love." "You can't analyze that away." While Liam wrestled with his feelings in the rehabilitation center, his parents took matters into their own hands. "This has gone far enough," Mark said one evening as he sat in his study with Evelyn. His face was stern, his hands clasped tightly together. "We need to remove any trace of her from his life." "What do you mean?" Evelyn asked, her voice tinged with unease. "I've already spoken to some people," Mark said. "They'll take her away to another city, far enough that Liam will never find her." Evelyn gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Mark, you can't be serious. She's just a woman. Someone who's lost her way. It's not her fault that Liam. She's ruining him." "Evelyn," Mark interrupted. "He's throwing his life away for her. If we don't do something, we'll lose him." Evelyn hesitated, tears welling in her eyes. "And what about her?" "She's someone's child, Mark. She's a human being. She's not our responsibility," Mark said coldly. "Liam is, and I'll do whatever it takes to protect him." In the dead of night, a group of men approached the alleyway where the mad woman often slept. She was huddled against a wall, her hair covering her face, singing softly to herself. "Is this her?" one of the men asked, his voice low. "Yes," another replied. "Let's get this over with." They moved quickly, grabbing her before she could react. She screamed and thrashed, her voice piercing the quiet night. But they held her firmly, dragging her to a waiting van. By morning, she was gone, taken to a distant city where she would be left to wander the streets, far away from Liam. Far from the city, in a quiet rural village, an elderly man sat outside his small mud house, staring into the distance. His name was Samuel, and he carried a secret that weighed heavily on his soul. Years ago, Samuel was sitting outside his mud house when he saw a beautiful car driving into the compound. He adjusted his seat very well with the hope that they were coming to see him. But they weren't coming to his house. The car took a bend and entered the compound, That leads to his younger brother's house. Samuel was richer than his brother. His brother and his household worshipped Samuel. Not long after the car entered, one of his nephews came to him. "Good evening, uncle. My father said that I should come and call you," his nephew said, and Samuel followed him immediately. He had been wondering why a beautiful car like that would go to his brother's house. He was told that the owner of the car had come to marry his niece, Grace. His niece had been the pride of the family. Beautiful, intelligent, and kind-hearted, she was set to marry a wealthy young man from a neighboring town. The match was celebrated by everyone except Samuel. Samuel's anger was so visible, although no one noticed it. He hated the arrangement. He tried to dissuade the people from marrying Grace, but they refused. His only reason was that, if Grace got married to a rich man, his father would stop worshipping him. "Your in-law will make you rich, that you won't remember me again," Samuel said to his brother one evening. "Isn't that our prayers for our children to train us after training them?" The man answered him, "I am happy for you, my brother," Samuel said finally with a bitter soul. His brother noticed something on this day, but he laughed, dismissing Samuel's jealousy as petty and harmless. But Samuel couldn't let it go. The thought of his brother's success gnawed at him, filling him with resentment. One fateful night, Samuel went to a local native doctor. "I want you to ruin my niece's engagement," he said, his voice trembling with anger. The native doctor looked at him with quiet curiosity. "You would curse your own blood." "I have my reasons," Samuel replied. The doctor didn't ask any more questions. He gave Samuel a charm, instructing him to throw it into the air under the light of the moon. "She will lose her mind," the doctor said. "But beware, her madness will only end if someone falls in love with her and kisses her as she is." Samuel laughed. "No man will ever love a mad woman," he said. "Never say never, and remember that if the madness leaves her, it will come back to you. There's no way it is going to leave her," Samuel said with all assuredness. The next day, during her introduction ceremony, Grace's life changed forever. As she carried a cup of wine to her fiancé, she suddenly stopped, her hands shaking. Then, without warning, she screamed and ran, tearing off her shoes as she fled into the away. The guests were horrified, her family devastated. Samuel watched from the shadows, his satisfaction mixed with annoying unease. Hello champions, thank you for your support. I hope you enjoyed the stories. Please leave a comment below and subscribe to my channel. In the next chapter, we will find out if Liam was able to find the mad woman and what exactly happened between them. I am curious to know if Liam would ever give a dirty woman a kiss. What do you think? Please drop a comment below.